So this is the title of my talk, Enhancing Resilience to Coastal Erosion and Flooding in the Coastal Areas. If you see on the left-hand side picture, the erosion at the coast of Orissa, it was a combined effect of riverline input and then a cyclone which was setting on the coast. We all know floods in Mumbai and Chennai and also in Kerala. That time we don't have a flood warning system available with the ministry, but now we are ready with this flood warning system. Coming to the outline of my talk, I'll briefly introduce about how the coast has formed and what are the benefits which we are deriving from the coast. And briefly, I touch upon the basic principle of the coastal system, which is very important. And then I talk something on coastal erosion because it is very important. We are losing a land and habitat and aesthetics. And then another one is on the siltation. So erosion and siltation go one and together. The third aspect which I am going to cover is flooding along the coastal areas, which can be due to the high precipitation or storm surge related things for that. Then how do we manage this erosion? There are several solutions like hard or soft or hybrid solutions. And I will tell you some case studies on Pondicherry, Kadalur, Pelikappuram and Ramayapatnam, which was funded by the ministry. And then these projects are all successful projects along the Indian coast. When we talk about the flood warning systems, I'll speak a little bit on Chennai, which was already put in operation, and Mumbai, it is almost complete, and we are going to launch it shortly, maybe in a month time. This monsoon, we will do it in pilot mode, but next monsoon, it will be on the full. The last part, I am going to talk on the climate change adaptation, which is very important because we are seeing so many changes in the system. And we all know, yesterday, I think we have celebrated World Ocean Day. Ocean is almost controls the planet life, whether it can be ecosystem or the climate for that. We need to understand more about that. Coming to our coast, its coastline is basically a meeting point of land and sea and ocean. It includes several morphological features like beaches, cliffs, caves. The bottom picture, which will clearly show about the history, which connects from the river, and then the meeting point of the river to the sea is called as the history. We have wide beaches, cliffs, and headlands. This I'm going to talk more with a good number of illustrative pictures in the future. When we look at our landforms along the Indian coast, if you start seeing for that east coast and west coast and islands, they have a different landforms altogether. Some we have lagoons, low dunes, and alluvial mud flats, and then also we have a variety of deltas and then dunes. When we come from the west coast, in Gulf of Kutch and Rann of Kutch, we have a salt marsh. It is in the Gujarat coast. Once we come down, we have mud flats in Gulf of Kambar. Further we come down, we have a beautiful headlands followed by the base, which is of tourist attraction. Then further we come down, we have cliffs. These are all the typical landforms along the Indian coast. This is the classical heritage site of Varkala in Kerala. Once we come to the east islands, we have islands with lagoons and the beautiful lagoons on the western side and then open sea on the eastern side. The lagoons are basically formed by the volcanic formations, but later on it lives with the coral. And these are all the beautiful islands, which are one of the typical landforms for the west coast of India. Same is case with the Andaman group of islands, but in the configuration they are slightly different. We have vertical cliffs in the Andaman group of islands. But once we come to the delta, this is the second largest lake in India, Pulicat Lake, which attracts a lot of bird and the ecologically sensitive area. Same is case with the Velar estuary. The mangrove at Pichavaram in Tamil Nadu is surviving basically because of this Velar estuary. Then we go further north, we have beach cups. These are all formed only during winter seasons, but now rarely we see such kind of beach cups along the Indian coast due to the change in the climate or oceanographic conditions. When we go further north, especially on the eastern Ghats, we see caves and arches. Basically, these are all the erosion features of the coast by the action of the wave and then current further. When we go further north, we have a huge sand dunes, but sand dunes are available on the east coast of India also, but high sand dunes are there in the Orissa coast due to their formation. The bottom picture, which was clearly shown here, where the turtles will come and then nest on the top. So beach is very important for the habitats for that. And further north, if you start going further, there are beautiful sand spits. Once if the sand spit separated from the lake or coast, this is called as a barrier islands. Barrier islands are very important for us because they protect our coastline from the extreme events like the cyclones or storms. But unfortunately, many of the barrier islands are all occupied or they are being destroyed due to the various reasons. For that, which I will talk in next slide. Coming to the delta, this is one of the important landform along the Indian coast. We have a start from the Sundarbans, Ganga Delta, and then Mahanadi Delta, and then further Godavari estuary, which I am going to show here. And then further we come down, then we have Krishna, and then next is the Kaveri Delta along the east coast. But of course, on the west coast, we don't have that kind of wide deltas, but there are different configuration altogether. Wherever we have a deltas, we have a good amount of ecosystems. The bottom picture I am showing at mangroves. And similarly, at the Godavari estuary also we have Koinga mangrove systems which were built upon the these deltas for that. But when we look at the morphological changes, how these deltas are formed, suppose if we have upstream some barrages or dams are constructed on the top, it will have a direct significance on the coastal areas for that. When we look at our coast, we have almost 7,500 kilometers coastline, which is the 80th longest coastline. And then 40% of the people will live along the coastline, and then we have a exclusive economic zone of 2.3 million square kilometers. Many ecological sensitive areas are all along the Indian coast, like mangroves. They are on the coastal areas. We have tidal floods and then coral reefs. If you see in Lakshadweep or Andaman or even Gulf of Mannar, these are all some of the sensitive areas for that. And then we have turtle breeding grounds, which I already told about Gairmata in Orissa coast. This coast is enriched with a good amount of fishery resources. We have islands and tourist beaches all along the coast. Once we come to the activities along the coast, this is very important. Why we need to do is we need to balance economic activities as well as the ecosystems. We have ports and harbors. They are basically built for transshipment of ships and then transfer of cargo. And we have a good amount of fisheries and aquaculture along the coastline. Many industries are set up along the coastal areas because it derives a lot of benefit from the coastal areas. Many coastal power plants are there, and then these power plants draw the water from the sea and again dispose the hot water into the sea. There are renewable energy projects, and offshore wind is gaining importance along the Indian coast, especially on the Gujarat and Kanyakumari coast. These projects are yet to come up for that. Oil and gas, though directly it is not there on the coast, but some of the facilities of oil and gas are all established along the coastline. The say a classic case of Godavari estuary, where we huge amount of pipelines which will run on the coastline. Coast is known for tourism. We enjoy all the beaches for our recreation and then aesthetics and benefit. It is also used for the shipping. When we come to the mining, some of the rivers which bring the sediments into the ocean, they are reworked out and then placed on the beach that we extract for the heavy minerals like Chaura or Manavar-Kuchi or even in Orissa. We extract heavy minerals from there. The recent activity is the desalination. We draw the water from the sea and then again we dispose the brine into the sea. If we have to manage all those things, we should understand what kind of impact which can have on that. We have totally 9 coastal states and 4 union territories along the coast. When we see the statistics of the wetlands and all, I have given some pictures here. We have somewhere around 97 estuaries all around there and then 34 lagoons. But if you see the mangrove area, it is around 5,400 square kilometers. On the east coast, it covers around 56%, whereas in west coast it is 30%, and then island covers around 12%. We have a huge coral reef areas, Andaman, Lakshadweep, and Gulf of Mannar, and sparsely at other locations which covers around 1,400 square kilometers. Based on the sensitivity of the area, these areas have been classified as a marine protected areas. This covers roughly around 6,271 square kilometers. This we need to protect and then maintain it for our own benefit. Then when we look at the coastal processes, first I will talk about the wind. This is a classic paper by Dr. Shetty Shana and then Dr. Shankar way back in somewhere in the 70s and 90s when they published it. Basically wind, which not only drives the coastal circulation, but also waves are driven by the winds. When wind acts on the sea, waves are being generated. I'm not going to talk much about the details of how these things are formed, but what we understand is wind plays an important role in the ocean as well as on the land. Suppose if you see landforms along the coastline, we need to consider the wind. Sand dunes are all formed because of the wind. And these coastal currents varies with the season. During the November, you have one kind of pattern, especially in the February and May, you have another pattern, and then June, September. But now we need not have to worry about these things. INCOIS of Ministry of Earth Sciences gives the advisories on the coastal currents, which can be available to the many public for that. Coming to the tides, they are basically generated by the gravitation between Earth, Moon, and then Sun and other astronomical bodies. This is very important. Rise and fall of the water level. The between high tide and low tide, we call it as a range. That range is not uniform along the coast; it varies. But once we start seeing from Amphitronic Point at south of Sri Lanka, we have a narrow range. Once we go to the place called Kadalur in Tamil Nadu, it is the range is somewhere around 0.6 meters. Once we go to the Vizag, it is 1.2 meters. Once we go towards the Diga or Sundarbans, it is 2 meters. What does we see here is from you go from south to north, the tidal range is increasing. That's how the coastal process also slightly vary when we move from south to north. Similar is the case with the west coast. At Kochi, we have somewhere around 1.1 meters, but once we go to Mangalore, it is around 1.5 meters. Once we go to the Mumbai, it is 2.5 meters. But in the Gulf, it is completely different. In Gulf of Khambat, we get the tidal range of somewhere around 9 meters, but on the Kutch, we get 7 meters. These are all very important because some of the ecosystems, some of the morphological features are governed by these tidal patterns along the coast. Then coming to the waves. So here I have given a simple wave rose diagram which was done by an IoT team of coastal engineering. How it has been done is taking the data of last 30 years and we derived the wave climate for the entire Indian coast. How does it make a lot of significance for the coastal process? Once we see in the east coast, the sand which moves along the coast is basically governed by the wave climate. Once we move towards the north, the amount of sand, a littoral drift, what we call it as a net littoral drift, it significantly increases. At Chennai, it is around, the net drift is around 0.35 million cubic meter. But once we go towards the north, it is around 0.6. So we need to understand this process if you want to see or analyze the process along the beach. But if you see on the west coast, it's slightly complex because we don't get that much of longshore sediment transport, but it is a combination of longshore sediment transport and as well as onshore offshore transport, which I will tell you in my subsequent slide for that. This is very important to drive the coastal sediments along the coastline. This is the classic picture on the top, which you can see when the wave is coming from the deep sea to the shallow water, how it gets transformed. The wavelength will decrease, but wave period remains same, but the wave height increases when it comes to the coastline. Once the wave height increases, it starts feeding the bottom and then it lifts the sediment from the bottom to the top. That's how the morphological features along the coast is varied for that. But how the waves are generated? Waves are generated by the action of the wind, and then they generated in the deep sea and then comes to the coast. When we sit and then watch on the beach, we see always waves coming from the deep sea to the coast, and then they dissipate the energy once it comes to the coast. This shows the bottom picture of the longshore sediment transport along the coast. Whenever wave approaches the coast with a little bit of inclination, then there are two components of the currents called, one is longshore current and other one is onshore offshore current. Longshore currents drive the sediments along the coast, and offshore sediment currents which drives the sediments toward the coast or away from the coast. The next picture which I am showing is a beach under the normal circumstances. We have a seabed profile. On the top of that, when the waves are normal, we have a beach like that. Whenever we have a cyclone or something related to that, there will be sand will be removed from the dune and then it will be put in the subaerial beach. It will be remaining in the near shore. But during the normal conditions, again the sand will be brought back to the dune. So erosion will take in a minute, but deposition will take a significant amount of time for that. This we need to understand in detail if you want to analyze any process along the coastline. Here I will show you a cyclone, what it can cause to the coastline. I already explained about the tide and then waves. On the top of that, we have a cyclonic storm surge. How does it affect the buildings along the coast? If you see here, during the high tide with the storm surge, it hits the coast. This building will be completely subject to the damage. The bottom picture I am showing here is just before the cyclone and after the cyclone, how the building was removed from the beach and then put it on the sea. What do we infer from this here is whenever we have a tide and then wave on the top of that surge, this compounded effect can cause the damage to some of the structures along the coast. And this is the measurements what we have done along the Pondicherry coast. The recorded surge during the cyclone is somewhere around 0.7 meters. During that particular time, we have a wave height of around 4.5 meters. So this shows any cyclone is likely to cause a damage to the coastline further. But of course, it will come back to it as a natural system provided you have a beach on the other side. Then this coastal hazard, which I am going to talk right now, is on the erosion. Right from the 2007, many parts of the coastline is subjected to the severe erosion. It can be Puri, and then many of the coastal roads got damaged. In Visakhapatnam, some of the beach areas were completely damaged. Puducherry, the buildings were lost to the sea. Same is case with the Kerala. Now Kerala is experiencing a lot of erosion due to the various reasons. One is because of cyclones and also by the monsoon. And also, what is more important for that analysis of this erosion is whenever we have a cyclone, if a cyclone is followed by the monsoon, the severity of effect will be very high. So that we need to analyze further. What do we do or understand with this? What are the causes for this kind of erosion? There could be natural or man-made. Natural systems can be storms or extreme waves, sea level rise, and persistent low pressure due to the climate change. The top pictures which shows about the cyclone, tsunami, and extreme waves and sea level rise. On the man-made, we have ports which were built along the coastline, which will obstruct the sediments and then causes erosion on the other side, what we call it as a downstream side. Similarly, whenever we build the dams on the upstream side, that will reduce the sediment to the coastline, and then we are likely to get erosion on that. What we need to do is understanding of the coastal processes. Now, what ministry is doing with these four institutes of the ministry, we monitor all this process regularly. That will help in devising a mitigation measure for the coastal erosion. Here, I will show you a classic picture of after building the dam at Godavari Barrage, how the morphology has changed over a period of time. Before the dam, there was no such kind of pit there, but now we have a long elongated pit at Kakinada, and then now mangroves are formed this way. The positive effect here is formation of spit and mangroves, but negative effect is we are divide of the sediment to the coast. Coming to the lakes, this is the second largest lake in India, Pulicat Lake. It is to have two inlets, one on north and then two on the south. One inlet is located in Tamil Nadu. When we see the water spread area of Pulicat Lake during 1980, the water spread area is somewhere around 461 square kilometers. You can see the blue portion. But once we come during 2014, almost 50 to 60% of the lake area has been reduced. The reason for that is we have reduced the freshwater influx from the top, from the two rivers, which brings to the this Pulicat Lake. And also there are some impact from the seaside. Also the tidal water is also reduced. Let us look at what is the consequences of that. In 8 months in a year, we get a less freshwater inflow from the upstream and less saltwater intrusion also from the sea. Then it becomes dry and salty. The salinity of the lake goes up to, you can imagine, 65 parts per thousand. That means 65 ppt. The sea salinity is around 35 ppt, but here we will get around 65 ppt. That means they become completely hypersaline condition. Now you can imagine what kind of damage it can occur to the ecosystem when we have such kind of system for it. 4 months we will get a freshwater from northeast monsoon. That time the ecosystem is better and it is well managed. Similarly, when we look at a time scale, what kind of changes we can get along the coast. Before 1989, it was showing only accretion at the Vellar estuary. But after 1989 and 1998, in recent days, we see only erosion at most of the parts of the coast. And the reason for that one is, which I already told, reduction in the sediment supply from the upstream areas, and also there are combined effects of the seaside impact also on that. This particular one is very important if you want to do any mitigation method for it. The second one is the seasonal phenomena along the many of the estuaries. Here I have just plotted a sand spit, how it grows at the estuary. In the month of April, we have a narrow spit with the red one, which is shown here. But in the May, slightly it is elongated toward the north. In East Coast, all the spits are oriented towards north because net sediment transport is towards north. In June, we have elongated spit. In the August, it is completely elongated. But whereas in the case of September, it is completely elongated, and then we have a complete cutoff from the sea. That means there is no exchange of seawater between the sea and the estuary, then all the water or estuary ecosystem which survives on the estuary becomes hypersaline condition for that. Again, Tamil Nadu gets northeast monsoon, it opens up during northeast monsoon in October. We have a free flow of water between that. So this particular one is a seasonal phenomenon. So we have to be very careful when we are analyzing or doing any kind of mitigation measures, especially we are operating on the seasonal phenomena. Then coming to the port. Whenever we build the port along the coastline, we get a accretion on the one side and erosion on the other side, depending upon the direction of the longshore sediment transport. Especially on the east coast, we will get accretion on the southern side and then erosion on the northern side. That is basically, it is a impoundment to the longshore sediment transport along the coast, which I already explained earlier. This particular satellite picture, which shows in 1999, we don't have a port here. In 2000, the port was built anticipating erosion on the top. They have put some sand on the top, but now it is getting eroded. Now it is permanently lost. Then the next question is, how long or how much distance this effect of port will be there? If you classify this entire coastline between Ennur up to Pulicat Lake into the three zones, zone A is influenced by the port. That means the port effect is felt up to 3 to 4 kilometers. Beyond that, the effect is not felt. But of course, we cannot generalize this, because depending on the extent of breakwater which is extended into the sea and also the quantum of sediment which are moving along the coast, that will define the impact of the port on the other areas. This we need to understand very. This I classify it as a short to long term classification. Now come to the shoreline evolutions. If we want to understand, it can be natural or man-made. In the short term, we have a seasonal changes due to the wave climate, which I already shown about the Velar estuary. But once we go to the midterm, whenever we have a cyclone, that can have a midterm impact on that. The picture which I have shown on the bottom due to the cyclone and which was hit at the east coast. When we go to the spatial scale of 10 to 100 kilometers coastline length on the long term, it could be due to the regional sea level changes or regional climate variations, or even extreme waves, extreme events which comes out of the picture. When you go to the long term, there the sea level rise which will come into the picture, and then the scale will be of order of 100 kilometers. That means if you want to analyze the sea level rise, you need to analyze the coastline of length 100 kilometers. What it gives is, depending upon the process, the effect of a coastline will vary. This is due to the natural. But once we look at the man-made structures, small structures will have influence on the short term, but whereas a longer structure will have influence on the medium term. But if there is a change in the upstream activities of the river or estuaries due to the various land developmental activities, that can cause long-term changes on the coastline, which we will not be seeing immediately, but with the time we will see those things. Especially damming is the one which we say as a very long term, and then it can have impact up to 100 kilometers. Now, these are all the spatial scales which we address on the shoreline change. Then what is the next? So we have analyzed the shoreline change map by NCCR. My colleague Dr. Kankara has analyzed of 27 years of data, which shows about that. We have released this report to the public, and it is available with the NCCR website. What does it indicate? Now we have analyzed the sandy shores, rocky coast, and coastal structures and vegetation coast. This particular one is delineated using remote sensing data. Bottom picture shows the amount, how many data sets have been used for analyzing the shoreline changes. Of course, in addition to the satellite data, we have done a lot of field work along the coast to validate whatever results we have done, analysis which we have done using satellite data, which is really true or what for the validation. Then come to the maps which we have generated for the erosion accretion. We have somewhere around 9 state level maps. At 1:25,000 scale, we have 526 maps are generated all along the Indian coast. This map shows erosion hotspots along the entire Indian coast, which we monitor more frequently, but other places which we are monitoring only through the remote sensing data. This database will be available on the website. Ministry will disseminate through the various sources along the Indian coast, which can be useful by the public as well as state governments and then researchers also. Then coming to the statistics of erosion. When we look at between east coast and west coast, almost 38% of the coastline in the east coast is eroded, but in the west coast it is slightly less, 27%. But across the states, when we start looking at that, West Bengal coast erosion is somewhere around 63%, followed by Puducherry is 57%, and then Tamil Nadu 41, and then Kerala is around 45. Then rest all follows. Of course, these are all not fixed one for that. It can vary with the time and then depending on the process along the Indian coast. Then we have developed this web-based information system. This is not right now put in operation, but we'll put it in operation, which tells about shoreline changes and land loss and gain, and then developmental activities along the coastline, what has been built there. And then we also have some database which is built on the system, and then impact of sea level rise on the coast. And then we finally will come out with a vulnerability index, which are all what are all the areas which are most vulnerable for the sea level rise. Now I will come to the sea level rise impact on the coast. This shows. We have taken this picture. In fact, I myself have done the study at Velar yesterday. This picture was taken just before the tsunami and after the tsunami. The extent of damage which was caused by the tsunami. But of course, this information has been used by INCOIS for validation of inundation model for the tsunami warning system for that. Same thing which we can use it for sea level rise. If you see, there is a 1 meter rise in the sea level. These are all the deltas or delta areas which will be affected by flooded by the sea level. But if you have a 2 meter height, there will be a more effect on that. This is only just based on the topography or dam we have plotted on that. But it is not that simple. What we see for that, I will explain in my subsequent slides what kind of impact it can have on the sea. Just look at if we have a simple inundation, we will take elevation data and then analyze the flooding due to the sea level rise. But there is a slightly enhanced one. What we can do from there is a simple numerical techniques can be used and then see how it will affect the beach. When there is a sea level rise along the coastline, there will be increased wave activity on the coast, which will take away the sand from the dune and put it into the sea. As a result, there is a retreat of shoreline. Of course, these sediments can always come back, but there will be some loss of coastline or beach in the area due to sea level rise. But this is not as simple, which I talk about that, but we need to have a little bit of process-based model if we want to analyze sea level rise in a long term. Then coming to what it can cause impact to the various parts of the landforms along the coast. If it is a sandy shore, then the loss will be very high, and then we will lose the infrastructure along the coast, and depends on the slope of the beach as well as the extent of sea level rise. The sea level rise analysis has been done by Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, our institute, which will give us how much of sea level projections are there for the Indian coast. This is basically done by the Climate Change Center at IITM. But suppose if we have a coastal structure, when we have sea level rise on the top, some of the coastal structures may not function its values, and then we need to design the new structure. Then we are in a position, we have to build a new structures along the coast for that. If we have vegetated coast, of course, the damage on the vegetated coast will be slightly less, but there will be some effect on the vegetated coast also. It may regain back, but of course, there could be some damage on the vegetated coast also due to sea level rise. Coming to the key principles of the coastal protection. Actually, if you understand the process correctly, if there is no real damage, don't compare between the stable coast and eroding beaches. Don't do anything or don't fix it. That is the best solution which we can do, especially on the natural coastline, what we have for that. In some places where we want to have a protection, the best approach would be a sand-based solution, what we have done for the Pondicherry. But suppose in some places it becomes tough, we need to build some arch structures. We can build seawalls or drains or offshore breakwater. But of course, these structures will have some kind of negative impact on other areas that we need to analyze carefully and then implement these solutions along the coast. And there could be hard solutions or soft solutions or mixed solutions depending on the design, what we do for them. What is more important for the coastal structures is we need to analyze for its functional as well as structural performance. What do mean by functional performance is, suppose in the case of Pondicherry, if you want to have a beach back, then you need to have a different design altogether for that. That is the functionality what we are designing in the beginning. Similarly, structurally, this particular structure should be safe for the events which we are getting on that, whether it can be cyclone or local currents or whatever it may be for that. And these are all some of the coastal protection measures which was implemented across India and across the world. It could be a simple revetment or the seawall or grinds which are perpendicular to the coast, and then offshore breakwater which is away from the coast, but of course it will build a beach on that. And submerged reef, this was done at Varkala in Kovalam beach in Kerala coast, and similar things which we have done there other places. And then coming to the beach nourishment. In Kadalur Perikuppam, which was a fishing village, three fishing villages were badly affected by the cyclones. Here I'm showing a picture of 1999, where was the coastline. Now the coastline has gone, and then there was almost 100 meters erosion on that. We have designed a geosynthetic based structure which is 25 meters long and then 7 meters in circumference. Now you can see here the building was exposed completely to the sea erosion. The concept how it works is like a similar like island. When you look at island, on the western side we have a beautiful lagoon. There is a reef slope, and then once it comes to the top, we have a reef crust. When the waves comes from the west coast, it breaks on the reef edge, and then we have a beautiful lagoon here. That's how islands are protected naturally by these coral reefs and edges. Same concept has been adopted for this Kadalur Perikuppam. We have two geotextile sites on bottom and one on the top, placed at a water depth of 4 meters, which is 100 meters away from the coastline. This will break the waves, and then that's how this coast is protected. Here I'm showing I will show you more in the video how these geotextiles have been installed. After the geotextiles have been installed, earlier the waves were breaking right on the coast, which I'm showing the mouse, but now the waves are breaking here, and then the top picture shows how the waves breaks on the top. After the implementation of the solutions, we have a wide beach. Earlier you can see the erosion patterns here, but now we have a good amount of beach there. This particular video which shows the erosion of the particular fishing hamlets and shoreline changes have been monitored over a period of time. That's how the coast got eroded, and we have put these geotextile tubes which will break the waves. These are all in segments. This is how using a jack-up barge we have laid these geotubes, two on the bottom and one on the top. After that, the beach is getting formed. After some period, you can see the coastline how it has improved, and then waves are breaking away from there. That's how we got this solution, and then now we have fishing hamlets are completely protected from. The secondary benefit of that is we have a lot of marine growth on the tops, and then we'll get fish and crabs on the top of that, which is beneficial to the fisherman community. Now I come to the Pondicherry. In 19th century, we have very good beach. Before the construction of harbor, we have some amount of beach, but now there is no beach. This is basically compound effect of harbor as well as change in the wave climate in that. Seeing this erosion, they have put some seawall for small 4-kilometer stretch. It has shifted the problem to the north. Like that, now almost entire 8 kilometers of coastal stretch got completely eroded. What has happened is it has taken away entire sand in the system. You can see here, whenever we build a hard structure, it will cover the sand, and then sand will be taken or permanently lost into the system. We have done some analysis of the entire coastline of 40 kilometers. If you have a problem at one place, you should not do analysis only at one stretch. You have to do a little bit of longer coastal stretch. We have divided into the 4 regions. Zone A is influenced by the port, and Zone B is completely protected by the seawall. Whereas in Zone C, you have structures called grinds which were built there. Zone D is unaffected area. After doing analysis, now further analysis has been done near the port. How much of sediment has been lost from the system? This is required if you want to again build back the beach to the normal state. What we have done is longshore sediment transport was analyzed. In 8 months, the sand moves towards northern direction in the east coast, and 4 months it comes towards the south. Net is towards the north. These kind of patterns were analyzed, and then we have designed the concept similar to what we have learned from the base which I have shown in the beginning of my talk. What we have is a headland on both the sides, and then wave. When the wave approaches there will be convergence of the waves on the headland and divergence at the bay. That's how these bays are always protected. Same concept has been used for the Pondicherry. We have one reef on the north and one reef on the south, and whatever sand which has been lost there, which was built there. This is the natural picture which was shown between the two headlands. This is the concept what has been designed, and then along with the reef, we implemented this solution. This shows the how we have laid the reef. It is not an easy task to lay the reef along the coast. NIOT has developed this expertise, and then it has been implemented by Innov design as well as Innov's construction methodology. And this shows how the 900 tons of weight of this reef has been launched into the sea, and it was also launched basically using a airbag which was there placed below the system further. And what we have done is, top part we have put the sand using a beach nourishment which was taken from the river and then placed on the top. On the other side, we have built a submerged reef on the rocky wall, and finally this reef was laid. And then we have tested this performance using the measurements collected at that place. Waves comes during the southeasterly wave, which drives the current towards the north direction. Then again, if you have a reef here, the waves will be rotated towards the south, and then there will be reversal in longshore current direction. That's how these are all the measurements are indicated the functionality of the reef at that particular place. You can see here, these are all the red patches which shows waves are coming from southeast direction. But at the reef, before the reef and after reef, if you compare, the waves are rotated, and then that's how this coast is protected. Now you can see here the wide beach, and then this has not only generated a beach, but also has generated a lot of marine growth like Kadalur Perikapam, which are shown there. Now, the advantage of this particular structure is you have a beach on either direction. That means we are not stopping any sediments along the coastline. And this shows the dedication of beach by the ministry to the public. And then I'm showing the video of Pondicherry, how it has functioned. Now we don't have a beach there. Waves are breaking on the top of the seawall. This is the big structure which was weighing 900 tons. Now it is on the right on the coast. We are ready to launch this particular structure into the sea. Now this is going for launching. Slowly all these airbags were removed from the system. Now we can see here there's a speed animation or event which shows how the reef has been launched into the sea. These are all the numerical simulations which were done from the computer model, and then how it matches with that. That's how the beach has formed. People started enjoying this beach. I think Pondicherry was not having beach for last 30 years. Now ministry has given a beach for the Pondicherry. Same is the case with Orissa, but here we don't have man-made intervention. At the spit, we have given a simple solution of opening of mouth. That has resulted in the formation of beach. I will show you how the beach was formed, and this animation, it shows the spit's growth along the Orissa coast. This is a relatively undisturbed coast. We need not have to do a major intervention for that. We have to understand the system. Now this is the erosion combined effect of river and then cyclone. Huge sand dunes were completely lost from the system. Normally, we are not supposed to build any buildings nearer to this kind of dynamic areas, but since we have built there, what to be done? So we have opened this mouth. That is a solution what has been given by us, by NIOT. And now the river is open to the sea. Water is going out of the inlet. Now we have beaches formed, and then with this slogan. So now you can see a beach which is formed after the opening of the inlet. That's how we have protected this coast, and with less money or intervention for that. Same kind of concept we are doing for Visakhapatnam, where it was severely eroded, but here we are using a different concept using numerical modeling, and then all these things are done using a seasonal analysis. Finally, how does the Vizag beach look like? So we have a recreational one, and then this is the concept which has been developed for that. Almost we have completed a detailed project report. This will be implemented by the government of Andhra Pradesh with World Bank funding, and then NIOT is the consultant which was selected on the nomination basis to do the work, start from beginning to the end. So now along the Indian coast, we have done many coastal protection projects along the Indian coast. Right now we implemented 2 demonstration projects. With that, we are developing a new and innovative approaches for the east coast of India. Our future projects will be on the Orissa, Kerala, and Lakshadweep. That has already been taken in pipeline, and then we are working out for that. The second one which I am talking about is the hazard, coastal hazard is flooding of the coastal area. This is run by National Center for Coastal Research along with National Center for Medium Weather Range Forecast and CMAR Develop, IMD, and then IITM Pune. In Mumbai, we had a rainfall of 94 centimeters in 24 hours. It has paralyzed entire city of Mumbai. Same is case with the Chennai. Now we have done an immediate mapping of the what are all the areas which were flooded due to the this flooding in 2015. That has given a good map of flooding in Chennai area. This we have used for the numerical model. That time we don't have. Same is the case with the Kerala. After the event, we have gone to the Kerala site and then mapped all those things, and then this data is very useful for setting up the numerical model. So what has been done is after these events, Office of Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India has initiated a project on that. Now later on, they have requested Ministry of Earth Sciences to take up this flood warning system. Now we have implemented the system. What it does is it takes the care of the weather models with precipitation which comes from IMD, NCMRW, and then IITM. Hydrology and catchment will be taken, simulated from the data collected from the state government. We ourselves collect the river data, and then that has been incorporated in the numerical model. Finally, we use hydrodynamic model to drive the forcing from the sea. Already we established this kind of system in Chennai. It is right now in operation mode. This shows the desktop how we operate the Chennai flood warning system for that. And these are all the maps which shows about and what level, what are all the areas which are likely to be inundated. These maps have been verified by the state government, and then they're quite happy with these maps. And then still we are working in close association with the government of Tamil Nadu in improving the system wherever it is required for that. Now, taking that, I think Secretary Ministry of Earth Sciences has suggested we should go for integrated model for the any area, not only for the coastal area, even for the mainland also. Suppose in hinterland we should be in a position to do for that. We are in a position to do that. What we have done is a precipitation module which talks about rainfall with the forecast of 72 hours, and the nowcast for 3 to 6 hours using the rain gauge or radar network. And then finally we have an inundation model which runs on upstream hydrology and river flood, and then there will be urban flood modeling for that. On the seaside we have a ocean hydrodynamic model, and storm surge will be incorporated to that. A decision support system will be developed based on the Indian map for the forecast and nowcast, and this exposure analysis will be done for that. And this shows the flood warning system for the Ministry of Earth Sciences. It contains data assimilation module, flood module, and inundation module, and vulnerability module, and risk module. Finally, we go with the discrimination module for that. And for Mumbai, this has already been established, and then we are putting up in the pilot mode. It will be launched shortly, and this shows the map how we collect the data for that. A short video on flood warning system for the Chennai, how it has been developed, and then it has been implemented there, where we have a huge catchment area with various lakes along the coast. Now weather models will give the precipitation. Using hydrological model, we get all the precipitation information. Then we have a catchment model which runs with the rainfall is translated into the river, and then finally hydraulic model which will predict the inundation of the coastal areas or rivers. And we take the sea forcing from the hydrodynamic model which is built into the system for that. This how areas will be predicted for the flooding due to that. And these are all the areas which were inundated due to the flooding by the precipitation. We have prepared a red atlas map for that. Similar maps will be usually as a ready reckoned map for the Tamil Nadu state government. Now coming to the how do we connect a coastal process to the global system for that? This is one of the classic paper. Of course, IITM is working on a earth system model. What we need to understand is, suppose if we want to link with the global system to the coastal process, we need to have a integrated model for that, which incorporates land, river, and the ocean. Especially when we do the flood modeling and all, we need to have upland, river, and then wetland, estuary, and then coastal water for that. If you have to design a structures for that, for the climate change, existing structures have to be modified, or otherwise we have to move away from the coast, which is not possible. So we need to do different techniques to be analyzed for that. Other one is adopt the nature-based principle for the protection of the coastline. So what we are doing is, suppose if you want to analyze for the climate change, the structure design has to be slightly changed, because there could be increase in the significant wave height. How do we address this? One way of doing is building the adaptability in the system, so that today I design the structure in a way, such a way that it will be used for the increased wave height in the future. Same is case with the crust level of structure. Today I design with low crust level with less investment, but later on I can improve the structure. If you want to do that, what we need to do is we have a good projections of the sea level rise, and also the system should be flexible enough to adapt for the future. That's what we are working on in detail with the numerical models, and then in terms of innovations in the structure. Today I don't invest more, but tomorrow I will. If you want to invest, this present structure should be amenable for investing more. This is called as a adaptation pathways, which has been adapted across the world. How we channelize the investment for the future. So today I'm not going to invest much, but later on, if I want to invest for the future, the present structure should be amenable for its modification due to climate change and related things for that. Now I come back to our ministry. We have totally 10 institutes in the ministry, and 4 institutes works on the ocean, like Center for Marine Living Resources, National Center for Coastal Research, and CCR, and then INCOIS, and NIOT works on the technology one. There's a Center for Polar Research, which also works on ocean and polar regions. We have 3 centers which are backbone of the ministry, which works about the climate. Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology and IMD, and then National Center for Medium Weather and Forecast, which gives the forecast or advice to services. On the 2 institutes works on the solid earth, like earthquakes or what is happening along the earth crust further. This is a small family which we try to provide services to the disasters, also to exploration, and then harness the resources along the ocean or even the coastal areas for that. And I should say my thanks to many of the people who have directly or indirectly worked with that. First of all, my secretary Dr. Rajivan, and then former secretary Dr. Salesh Naik, and then several directors of my sister organizations. Of course, I have a big team working with me, both NCCR and then as well as in NIOT, and also from the IMD when we are working for the Mumbai flood warning system for that. So thanks to all of them, including project staff, office staff, and then student. I will end with this last slide, which is not yours to destroy. We should preserve it, protect it, and pass it on to the next generation. This is not only to the beach, even also to our earth or ocean. We should preserve and then conserve. And thanks for your attention.